At 5:58 a.m., I stepped into the yard in a flannel robe. Coffee in one hand, thinking maybe the sunrise would be enough to keep me decent today. Then I heard plastic crack like bones. Then I saw her. Pamela Cross, new HOA president of Mesa Vista, was in my side yard with a crowbar, neon blue paint on her fingers, punching holes in my rain barrels like it was field day. She smiled at me like a realtor at an open house and said, "You're hoarding water. Mr. Mason, the board voted, consider yourself fined and crack." Another barrel bled across my boots. I asked if she'd lost her mind, pointed to the filtered lids and mosquito dunks lined up like breath mints, and she just tapped her tablet. 3 neighbors with clipboards behind her. Perfume, heavy as a shopping mall. Telling me my barrels were industrial and eyesore. A hazard state law doesn't trump covenants. And if I didn't drain them in 48 hours, we'd be talking foreclosure. Yeah, that happened. My name's Cal Mason. I moved to Juniper Hollow after my wife Lena passed. 2 years of fighting hard, then a house so quiet it hurt. I bought 2.7 acres with stubbly junipers, one stubborn patch of soil that remembered rain, and a deed from 1938 that felt like a blessing. Rights to divert and maintain the flow of Stone Gulch Creek for agriculture. A little hand-built gate upstream under cottonwoods that folks still called the Wheel. I promised Lena I'd grow for the pantry in town. Tomatoes that taste like July beans with a soft sweetness if you cook them slow. Something honest you can hold in both hands. The first letter from the HOA showed up on paper thick enough to feel smug. A 40-something page environmental compliance addendum. $500 for assessment, $50 a month for monitoring, $200 a day, till I drained every barrel. The next morning, Pamela returned with her cousin Evan, the HOA attorney, hair slicked suit tight, voice smooth as unfinished wood. "Sir, you're in violation. The board may foreclose state law does not supersede our covenants." He called me sir, the way some folks spit. I make jokes when I'm cornered, but I fight with homework. The county records room smelled like dust and old coffee, while I copied the 1938 deed black ink in a careful hand. Diversion distribution maintenance, that little earthen control structure upstream. Mine, older than the subdivision, older than half these roofs, older than any spray can. I called the water district. Teresa, the woman on the line, sounded like she'd seen every small-town trick and was fresh out of shock. Cal writes like yours usually outrank a paint committee, but document everything. And if that old gate's holding too much, call damn safety. That night I installed 2 more cameras by the garden and 1 by the side gate, and at 2:11 a.m. I watched Pamela and Evan creeping along my fence line like raccoons, measuring barrel height and whispering about stacking fines to 15 grand so the board could force a sale. I saved the audio, breathed slow, told myself to wait for daylight. Elliot. My mail carrier paused at my box the next day, eyes traveling the street. Cal. They hit the Sotos for chickens. Old man Garvey for parking his plumbing van. Mrs. Tran for bird feeders. Doesn't feel random. I called Rosa Delgado, a retired clerk, who knows the shape of every rule in this county. She arrived with lemon cookies, and a binder flipped through minutes lifted an eyebrow. Funny, Pamela's election doesn't clear quorum for much more than a bake sale, and those addendums look adopted at a special session notified by a newsletter half the street never gets. Then my buddy Gus, a contractor, told me he'd seen a pitch deck. Waterfront elegance at Mesa Vista, white tents, string quartet crystal under the cottonwoods. Waterfront in a desert where water runs on paper and seniority. Mine. You see the shape of it now, right? Create problems, scare folks out, cash in when the ground's clear. It turned mean in the petty way that says someone's scared. One night bleach in the barrels, another night fertilizer, then a bucket of dead fish, so the county would call my storage unsanitary. I cleaned, tested, posted polite notices in plastic sleeves, filmed everything. Pamela blew up next door, with posts about a dangerous hoarder at the edge of town. Evan emailed a cease and desist that looked important until Rosa held it to the light and laughed. When Pamela's son and two buddies tried to jam the upstream wheel with a bolt cutter, the deputy's spotlight found them blinking like cattle, and the videos went on 3 drives with timestamps. That earned me a visit from Roy Henderson, the county inspector, boots in the mud, clipboard balanced on a thigh, eyes on the level. "Cal, you've got pressure your granddad didn't plan for. This structure needs a controlled drawdown by the weekend document notified downstream coordinate emergency services. And for the love of everyone, don't let this become a circus." He wrote it down in block letters on official paper that felt heavier than any HOA letter I've touched. We put a plan together like a barn raising. Gus mapped the low spots around the greenbelt, where Pamela had started staging for her investor party. Rented decking laid over damp grass quartet, hired from Santa Fe white pavilions, planted exactly where Stone Gulch spreads when real weather shows. Priya from county planning walked me through notice language and temporary lane closures. Rosa drafted liability and service of notice polite and boring in the way good law is supposed to be. Elliot dropped certified letters like Santa in July. We warned families with kids and older neighbors first. Routine maintenance, shallow standing water for a few hours. Move cars to high spots, come watch from designated areas if you're curious. We'll grill hot dogs after, because there's no rule that says you can't learn a thing and eat. Somewhere in there, Pamela realized her party perched in a historical flood channel. She showed up with a checkbook and shaking hands. $25,000 if you postpone 1 week, she said. Makeup smudged, the kind of desperate that makes people stupid. Drop the violations. Stop the lies online. Tell your cousin to leave my gate alone, I told her, and maybe. She glanced at the porch camera, saw the red dot, and left in a pile of gravel. The next email was a restraining order with a judge's name, who retired in 2019. Rosa sent it to Roy. Roy sent it to the sheriff. I slept for the first time in months. Saturday came blue and clean. By noon, the greenbelt looked like Pinterest exploded crystal, lined up like soldiers' rental flooring, glinting servers, fussing with napkins. Upstream, we set tripods, calibrated flow meters, checked the generator twice. At 2:55, I tested the wheel a quarter turn. The steel groaned like it hadn't been touched since Reagan water nosed the lower channel the meter ticked on. At 300 euros, by the book, I opened to the rate Roy approved. 50,000 gallons an hour isn't a wall. It's a river remembering its name. Stone Gulch eased forward, caught light, rolled into itself, the way old things do when they're allowed to be honest. The quartet kept playing for about 2 minutes, because if you're paid by the hour and your shoes are still dry, you hang on to normal. Then the water whispered under the first deck, then the second, then around a power amp that popped like hot grease. A server stepped into a puddle, and the whole tray launched. Flutes ringing champagne diamonds in afternoon sun. Pamela climbed onto the decking and a white blazer phone to her ear, waving like she could stop a creek with posture. "Stop this right now," she yelled. "This is criminal. You're finished." I lifted the bullhorn hand steady. This is a lawful scheduled drawdown for dam safety. Documented, noticed, measured. Inspector Henderson is present. Please move to higher ground. The local reporter swung her camera from the quartet to the water to Roy, who said it like a shop teacher. Maintenance prevents failure. Failure ruins lives. This is the responsible thing. Pamela splashed up the slope at me. Blazer-soaked mascara trailing shoved her phone into my chest. Evans filing an injunction. Rosa took the phone like a shrimp tail and said, "Counselor, you faxed a fake order yesterday with a retired judge's signature. Would you like the sheriff to walk over, or do you want a head start?" Click. The water rose slow and honest. 4 inches, then 8, silvering the grass, lifting the hem of the pavilion. In pretty waves, nobody ordered. Investors picked their way across the lawn, like herons' pants, soaked to the knee shoes, making that soft squelch you never forget. One violinist stood on a chair and laughed. Not cruel, more like an exhale after holding your breath too long. Truth hit harder than the water when Pamela pointed at the floodplain and said, "You destroyed my reputation." And I said, "No, ma'am. You did that when you lied forged and tried to scare old people into selling." The deputy from earlier offered her a towel and a place to sit. By 5:30, the water started to fall, clean, smooth, satisfied. The party had evacuated to the parking lot, damp guests clutching swag bags like life preservers. We closed the gate at 6, signed. Roy's last line, took off our gloves, and felt tired in the good way. Fence mended right stew, shared with people who don't ask you to explain yourself. Aftermath rolled like you'd expect, and not at all. Investors decided Mesa Vista was above their risk tolerance. Evan had his turn. With the bar over forged filings and conflicts. Pamela lost the presidency in a vote that finally met quorum. Because funny thing, when the truth shows up, so do neighbors. Gus got elected on a platform of cut the nonsense. Rosa started a Saturday clinic at the library, teaching folks how to request records that Priya put flood channels on an easy map, and somehow white pavilions stayed off the greenbelt this summer. I tucked new barrels behind a lattice, so nobody has to look if it bothers them planted chilies. Lena would brag about to strangers in the hardware aisle, weighed pantry donations, just to hear the scale sing again. And once at the nursery on Highway 14, Pamela walked up and said I was drowning and dragging everyone with me. You were the first person who told me no, and meant it. I hated you for it. I think you saved me anyway. I told her I hoped she found water she could live with. Now here's the part that gnaws. Was I right to open the gate that day, or did I use the law like a hammer when a handshake might have done? If Roy hadn't ordered the drawdown, would it still be justice or just revenge with paperwork? I think about it when the creek goes quiet. I also think about Mrs. Tran's grandson running his fingers through the water as it braided around the cottonwoods about Gus, handing dry socks to a trembling server, about Rosa hugging me with one arm while waving forms like a flag with the other, about Lena's laugh. When I once told her I wanted a simple life, and she said, "Baby simple isn't easy." So tell me, where's the line where rules become weapons? Who gets believed in your town? Who gets bullied? And what did it take to turn the wheel? Drop your take in the comments. Push back if you think I went too far. Share the story of the time a petty tyrant tried to take what wasn't theirs. And if you want more true stories that smell like rain and tell the truth straight, hit subscribe. Tap like so this finds the next neighbor who needs courage, and ring the bell. You're there when the creek remembers its name again. You know what I mean?